Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming out today. My name is Ryan Leffel. I am the Senior Director of Strategy and Creative at Quora. Quora is a digital agency. We are headquartered in New York City. We also have offices in Los Angeles, London, Bangalore, and Kochi. We offer design, development, strategy, and optimization for unified commerce experiences. And we specialize in fashion, beauty, and lifestyle. So today we're going to talk about customer voices, understanding data and insight in order to make smart, informed design decisions. I'm going to jump ahead here and start off on this first slide. So we just want to talk a little bit about what is good design and how do you measure a good interface. So design is really about understanding a business. A good user interface is going to have a high conversion rate, and it's also going to have simplicity. In order to have simplicity, you need to first understand the business. You also need to understand the customers that are going to engage with that business. So we're going to start by just talking about the brand, right? How do you go about understanding who the brand is? The best way to understand a brand is to think of a brand as a person. So a brand is going to have goals, right? A brand has a voice. What defines me? Tone and expression. How do I want to present myself? Brands have personality. You need to think about what a brand likes. And then ultimately, brands have a promise. What do I offer? Who do I want to be? It's really important to understand each of these things in order to understand ultimately what makes a brand tick and where a brand is headed. Next, we have the customer. So obviously an important piece of the story here, understanding who the customer is that's actually going to engage with the brand. Who are these people? It's not just one customer. It's a lot of different customers, different ages, different incomes. Some are going to shop more on a phone. Some are going to shop. Some might be in store. Some are going to be in transit. Right? We really understand who this person is, what motivates them, when they're going to shop, how they're going to shop. So once we start to understand the customer and the customer's needs, then we can start to make really smart design decisions about who that person is. And these could be in the form of personas, customer journeys, or even putting together a strategy for personalization. So to me, it's always been really interesting to think about when you're measuring an experience, if you have the choice, let's say, between a beautiful site, but your content or your products aren't really that easy to find, or you have a site that's really easy to use, but the site itself doesn't actually meet the value of your brand, right? Which would you rather have? And I think today it's become a lot more complicated than that because your website is a channel, and there are a lot of other pieces of that channel. And it's not only about being beautiful and being easy to use, but it's also very much about being engaging and being relevant. And once you can be engaging and relevant, that's how you're going to get simplicity. Then ultimately, that's what's going to get you those higher conversion rates. So when we talk about how do we map these two, right? You have your business needs, and then you have your user needs, and then somewhere in the middle, we have what we think of as the sweet spot, right? What we want to be able to do is we want to be able to understand the business and understand the brand, or excuse me, understand the customer so that we can actually find that sweet spot. That's going to allow us to make really smart and informed design decisions that are actually going to make a big difference. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we go about doing this, how we go about learning. So designing without really putting much thought into it or just jumping in to an exploration, that's really nothing more than doing concept work. Supposing is good, but finding out is better, right? Our assumptions don't really mean anything because we're not really the ones who are going to be shopping. And if you're the one who lives and breathes the brand, you're probably the last person who should be making design decisions. So quite often we hear excuses, reasons why we don't need to do research. Ultimately, it comes down to two things. It's always time and it's always money. And I think one of the really important points to make here is research could be done quickly and research could be cost effective. Everyone has time, everyone has a timeline, everybody has a budget, but learning up front is going to really save you a lot of time and money down the road. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the different ways that we can efficiently and effectively go about doing research at Quora, which actually helps us learn about customers and brands. And starting off here, it's what we call in the wild testing. This is actually a great way to to get your customers out there shopping. So it's really nothing more than using the camera and a video recorder on your phone. So if you could imagine you ask a customer to go online and find a shirt, for example, and then find that shirt in the closest store location, send them to the store, have them turn on their camera, have them put on the video recorder, walk around the store, take pictures, take video, talk out loud, right? It's powerful. Imagine what that is able to do for learning about your customer journey. Get in the field, watch people shop, talk to sales associates, talk to customer service reps. What people are doing in the store is going to closely mimic what they're going to do when they come to your website. The questions people are going to ask your customer service reps are probably going to be the same questions that they're going to have when you come to the website. These are all quick and easy things that you're able to do, and it's going to give you a lot of really good insight to think about functionality, to think about personalization, and ultimately what you need to consider with your design and marketing plan in order to give the customer what they need in order to be successful. Expert reviews, right? Everybody wants to take a look at their website, and that's really good for pointing out the obvious, right? And thinking about best practices. But a really important point on best practices is there's really no such thing as a best practice, right? Because a best practice for one brand is going to be completely different than a best practice for another brand. So in order to talk about best practices, you need to understand the customer, you need to understand the business, and really you need to understand their vertical. If you have a site that is selling clothing for men, it's going to be much different than a best practice for a site that is more focused on women, let's say. Two different people who shop completely different. And then finally, user testing. So at Core, we do a lot of user testing, typically unmoderated user testing. And the really key thing, important thing to think about up front when you do user testing is who do you want to test? And typically, your options are going to be testing panels, right, which are easy access to testing panels are typically more sophisticated or expert users, right? And they're going to come in and they're going to meet your demographic and they're going to give you feedback on what they see on your site, but they're paid to come in and complete a task, right? So quite often, you're going to see them stumble, but they're still going to complete. And in reality, that person's probably not actually going to make it through your experience in the real world if they weren't paid to be there to take the test. And then the other option is to actually try to intercept your customers when they show up at your site by maybe having a modal on your site and asking them to come into a testing experience. This is going to take a little bit more time because you can't guarantee how long it's going to take to find enough customers to come in and actually want to go through a test. But you're going to be getting feedback from the actual voice of the person who's coming to your site as opposed to somebody on a testing panel who's more sophisticated, right? So the trade-off is time, but the payoff is going to be insight. And most importantly, you want to test the right people. So for example, if you have a website and you specialize in selling PC parts and Windows, you don't want to test a Mac loyalist because they're not going to give you the feedback that you need in order to learn what's really happening. Analytics, right? We spend a lot of time looking at analytics and setting up goals, and analytics are really good for telling you what is happening, but it doesn't really answer the why. This is where heat maps come into the story, and heat maps such as ClickTail, Crazy Egg, Hotjar, these are very low-cost things to set up, but they actually start to put the what next to the why, right? It's almost visual in-page analytics, so it allows you to see what is happening on your site or what's happening within your experience. When you pair that up with analytics, then you really start to learn something. And some of the heat mapping software offers screen records, which is actually really cool. So you don't have audio, but you can actually see somebody's mouse moving around, and you can track a person from the time they come to the homepage to the time they check out. All sensitive information is blocked off during checkout, but it's a really good way to get a lot of data about how somebody's actually making it through your shopping funnel. And talking about designing something smart. So as I mentioned earlier, your website is just a channel, and you have stores, you have social, text display, maybe television, maybe radio. These channels all need to be relevant, and they all need to be unified. They all need to feel as if they are part of the same experience. And in order to do that, personalization becomes really important. The great thing about personalization is you're able to give your customers what they need without them having to ask for it. And it's very powerful. And yes, personalization can absolutely be creepy, but The important thing to think about with personalization is don't personalize just because you can personalize. Personalize because there's an actual need to do that type of personalization. Just looking at a few examples of different types of personalization you see out there, because generally personalization is going to fall into two camps. You're either going to have personalization around marketing channels or personalization around content on your site. Everyone has seen this before, retargeting on Facebook. Somebody comes to your site, they see a product that they're interested in, they don't purchase it. Later that day, they go on Facebook, they see that product, right? It engages them, they get more information on it, and hopefully they come back to your site and actually make that purchase. It's a good example of personalizing a marketing channel. Priceline, for example, will send an email after you return from a vacation welcoming you home, and then giving you a discount on your next adventure. Spotify has done a really good job of not only playing music that you're interested in, but also recommending other artists that you might not know about that are similar. And not only that, they actually embed your image in the recommendations, which makes it feel more real. Helly Hansen, I think, does a good job on a few different fronts. So Helly Hansen is able to personalize based on weather, for example. So if it's raining outside, put raincoats on your website, right? It's actually powerful that way. If it's January and somebody's in New England, you can show clothing for the snow versus somebody who's coming to your website from Miami, maybe they might want to see swimsuits, right? So you're able to personalize based off of geography and off of weather, and that's a really subtle way to personalize. It's not creepy. You're giving the customer what they want in a way that they didn't even have to ask for it or think, how did you get that information? So 83% of customers expect relevant information in products. And most business leaders know that this is important, but they're not taking action. 96% of business leaders think personalization makes good business sense. Only 6% of them actually have a strategy for personalization. A few more quick stats here. 20% of brands offering a fully personalized experience will outsell those that don't by 2018. 53% of shoppers say they buy more from retailers that tailor recommendations based on past purchases and browsing behavior. 40% of consumers become irritated when brands do not take their past behaviors into account. And then finally, and to me this is a really big one, personalized content, experiences with personalized content are seeing a 33% increase in conversion rate, which is really big. Just thinking about the power of mobile and all of this, so this is actually an old quote by Bruce Lee, and it became very relevant to responsive design. And it goes, if you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. You want to think of your content as water. And if you have a responsive site, for example, just because it follows a one-to-one grid, you want content to flow on your site based on what is best for that particular screen, not based on what is best for a screen. So you want to optimize your content for screen more so than a grid. 75% of consumers use a mobile device while shopping in stores. 40% of shoppers have made 5 or more mobile purchases, and you can see that in 2015, smartphone use grew by 50%, and that's only going to continue to grow and grow. Social is an extremely important part of the story. More than 2/3 of consumers use social media. 71% of consumers are more likely to make a purchase based on social media referrals, and 78% of respondents said that companies' social media posts impact their purchases. Having a good social media strategy is going to be key in your overall design strategy. I'm going to talk a little bit about optimization. So for anyone who has a website that is generating revenue, whether it's all of the revenue for your company or part of the revenue for a company, the worst thing that you could do is let that website sit there, right? You want to look at your website, you want to come up with ideas, make a hypothesis. If we could shorten this form to 5 fields instead of 8 fields, more people are going to click the submit button. Create variations, run these tests, analyze results, do it again. Don't stop. When it comes to conversion rate, right, which a lot of people think about optimization, they immediately jump to conversion, but If you think about it, if you have a conversion rate of 2%, that means that if 100 people come to your site, 98% of them are leaving without doing anything. That's a big number if you think about it. There's a lot of different ways we could impact conversion rate. We can optimize around add to cart, reducing bounce rate by optimizing across multiple pages. But optimization can also help you get more social media likes, more people into your email program, and you can also you can also optimize across your various channels. So this here is called the Kano model, and this is something that's started around in the 1980s, and it came out of Toyota as a way to measure your customer satisfaction, but it actually becomes really relevant to how you actually think about your user experience, and specifically optimization. So what we have here on the right-hand side on the x-axis, if you can think of that in terms of your features on your website, and at the top, you have customer satisfaction. And the greater customer satisfaction you have, the more people are going to come to your site, the more business you're going to do. And that's obviously a really good thing. At the bottom, we have basic expectations. If you have a website, somebody should be able to check out, right? They don't even think about it. It's just there. It's part of the experience. Then you have the performance attributes, and that is kind of the correlation between customer satisfaction and your features. This is where you're competing, right? Everyone competes on performance, and when we optimize, we are optimizing on performance. That could be having search that works really well, really good filtering system, a responsive site that loads content really fast on mobile or on a tablet, right? Performance, this is where the competition is. Then at the top, we have these excitement generators. These are the things that create delight. An example of this could be Nordstrom has been testing buy online, pick up at the curb, right? As you're getting close to the store, you send them a text message, they bring you your products. That's an example of delight. That in some way can make somebody's day that much easier, and it becomes memorable. But the really interesting thing about this is over time, right? Let's say in 6 months, what is an excitement generator or a delight is going to become a performance attribute. You're going to start doing it. You're going to start doing it well. Your competition is going to start doing it. They're going to start optimizing, right? So it's no longer delightful. It's performance. 6 months later, that performance attribute is going to become a basic expectation. It's just there. It's not something people think about. So you always want to make sure you have the basic expectations. You always want to make sure that you're optimizing against performance. And you always want to think about looking ahead and thinking about what do we need in order to be successful or set our brand apart. And that is it. Thank you all for coming out.